September 26, 1916. The Somme Valley, France. Rain falls in sheets, turning the cratered earth into a maze of mud and corpses. Private William Easton stands in a trench so narrow his shoulders touch both walls. He's 23 years old, 5'7", with coal dust still embedded under his fingernails from his years working the mines in Durham. Water rises past his ankles. Behind him, in just this sector alone, 847 British soldiers have died in the past 48 hours. Ahead of him, across 200 yards of barbed wire and shell holes, German machine gunners wait in reinforced concrete bunkers. And in exactly 90 minutes, Easton and his battalion will be ordered to charge directly into those guns. The survival rate for men going over the top in this sector is 11%. Easton knows this because he's watched it happen 3 times already this week. But none of that matters now, because in the next 9 hours, William Easton will experience something worse than death, then emerge from the earth itself to become the most terrifying soldier the Germans in this sector have ever faced. The whistle blows at 6:47 a.m. Easton climbs the ladder, his Lee Enfield rifle weighing 10 pounds in his hands. The moment his head clears the trench, he hears it, the sound every soldier dreads. The metallic chatter of German MG-08 machine guns opening fire at 500 rounds per minute. To his left, Private Thomas Merchant takes 3 bullets to the chest before his feet even touch the ground. To his right, Corporal Davies makes it 4 steps before the top of his head disappears in a red mist. Easton runs anyway, because that's what you do. You run toward the sound of the guns because staying still means dying alone in the mud. He makes it 30 yards. Farther than most. The shell hits 12 feet away. A German 15-centimeter howitzer round carrying 11 pounds of high explosive. The blast doesn't throw him backward like in the movies. It picks him up and slams him down, driving him 6 feet into the soft earth of a partially collapsed dugout. And then the walls come down. 3 tons of mud, timber supports and sandbags collapse directly on top of him. Total darkness. Total silence, except for the ringing in his ears. William Easton is buried alive under 6 feet of French soil, and nobody above ground saw where he went. His right arm is pinned against his chest. His left arm has maybe 6 inches of movement. His legs are completely immobilized. The weight on his chest makes every breath a conscious effort. He can't move his head more than half an inch in any direction. And the air, what little there is, tastes like copper and clay and his own blood. He tries to scream. His mouth fills with dirt. He's going to die here. That's the first thought, clear and certain. He's going to suffocate in the dark while the battle continues above him, and his body won't be found until spring, if ever. But William Easton spent 7 years in the Durham coal mines. From age 14 to 21, he worked 600 feet underground in tunnels so tight you had to crawl. He's been trapped before. Once for 6 hours when a support beam cracked. He knows 3 things that most men don't. 1. Panic uses oxygen faster than anything else. 2. The human body can survive in surprisingly small air pockets if you don't panic. And 3. Soil isn't solid. It has gaps. It has air. If you're patient, if you're careful, you can sometimes find a way. He forces himself to stop struggling, stops trying to move. Just breathes. Slow, shallow, counting each breath. 1, 2, 3. The ringing in his ears fades, and he starts to hear other sounds. Muffled explosions from above. The distant rattle of machine guns. Screaming. Someone screaming for a medic. The sound distorted by layers of earth. The battle is still happening. Which means he hasn't been down here long. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe 10. His left hand, the one with limited movement, touches something hard. Wood. Part of a support beam. He works his fingers along it, feeling the grain, finding the edge. Behind the beam, there's a gap. Maybe 3 inches. Maybe more. He digs. Not frantically. Slowly. Deliberately. Using his fingernails like he used to in the mines, scraping dirt away one handful at a time, packing it into the tiny spaces around his body. 30 minutes pass. His fingers are bleeding now. He can feel the wetness, taste it when he accidentally brings his hand too close to his mouth. But the gap behind the beam is bigger. 6 inches now. Maybe 8. And when he turns his head, just slightly, he can feel air moving. Not fresh air, not clean air, but moving air, which means there's a space somewhere, a pocket, maybe connected to the surface. Hey, quick pause here. Before we continue with William's story, I want to talk about something that connects to this moment. When I was researching this video, I spent days going through war diaries, medical reports, trying to understand what it feels like to be trapped like this. And honestly, the mental focus required is insane. Which is why I've been using today's sponsor, Blinkist. Look, I'm not going to pretend I have time to read every book about World War I tactics and psychology. But Blinkist gives me 15-minute summaries of key ideas from thousands of books. I used it to go through 5 different books on trench warfare psychology while researching this script. Books like The Anatomy of Courage and Storm of Steel, condensed into insights I could actually use. If you're trying to learn more about history, psychology, really anything, check out Blinkist using the link in the description. You'll get 25% off a premium membership. Now, back to William, who's been underground for 90 minutes and has just made a discovery. His hand breaks through, not to the surface, but into a void. An air pocket, maybe 2 feet across, created when the dugout collapsed unevenly. He can't see it, but he can feel the space, and he can hear something. Breathing. Someone else is in here with him. Hello? His voice comes out as a whisper, his mouth still full of grit. Is someone there? No response. Just that breathing. Wet, labored. And then a groan. Whoever's in that pocket with him is alive but hurt. Badly hurt, judging by the sound. Easton digs faster now. He has a reason. He's not alone. If he can reach that pocket, maybe there's enough air for both of them. Maybe there's a way out he can't see from where he is. It takes another hour. His shoulders scream from the repetitive motion. His fingers are numb, but he widens the gap enough to push his arm through, then his shoulder, then his head. He pulls himself into the air pocket, and in the absolute darkness, his hand touches fabric, a uniform, British. He follows it up to a face. The man's skin is cold, slick with blood. The breathing is slower now, more irregular. I've got you, Easton says, even though that's a lie. He has nothing. No light. No tools. No way out. But the man's hand finds his and squeezes, weakly, and then goes limp. The breathing stops. Easton is alone again. But now he has something he didn't have before. He has the dead man's equipment. He runs his hands over the body, not thinking about who this was. Someone's son, someone's brother, just focusing on survival. A haversack, a water bottle, half full, an entrenching tool, a small folding shovel, 16 inches long with a wooden handle. The shovel changes everything. In the mines, the difference between trapped and free was usually just a matter of tools. With his hands alone, he could scrape. With a shovel, even a small one, he could dig. He feels the walls of the air pocket. Timber on 2 sides. Collapsed earth on the others. He picks a direction, not up. That's too much weight, too much risk of causing another collapse. He goes sideways, toward where his instincts, trained by years underground, tell him the structure might be weaker. 3 hours underground now, maybe 4. Time loses meaning in the dark. He digs in shifts, 20 strikes with the shovel, then rest, then 20 more. The air is getting worse. Thinner. Each breath requires more effort. His head pounds. Twice he passes out, coming to with his face pressed against the dirt, no idea how long he was gone. But the tunnel is growing. 18 inches wide, 2 feet deep. He's moving through the collapsed dugout like a mole, and he can feel the earth above him shifting, settling, threatening to come down again with every shovelful he removes. His hand breaks through into another space. Bigger this time. He widens the hole and crawls through, and suddenly the air is different, cooler. He can smell cordite, smoke, which means he's near the surface, near the trench system. He keeps digging, angling upward now, and his shovel hits something that clangs. Metal. He clears the dirt away with his hands and finds a German helmet. And inside it, a German skull. He's dug into an old buried trench line. From a previous battle, months ago, bodies still entombed in the walls. But this trench is partially open. He can see light, actual light, grey and dim, filtering down through a gap maybe 30 feet ahead. He crawls toward it, pulling himself over debris, over bodies German and British both. All of them just obstacles now, just things in the way of air and life. 9 hours. That's how long it takes from the moment the shell buried him until his head breaks the surface. 9 hours in the dark, breathing air that should have killed him, digging through earth and corpses with bleeding hands and a dead man's shovel. He emerges in a shell crater 40 yards behind German lines. The rain has stopped. It's late afternoon. The battle has moved on. To his left, he can see German soldiers in their trench, maybe 15 of them, relaxed, smoking, thinking this sector is secure. Easton's mind is not right. 9 hours in the dark does things to a man. The lack of oxygen, the fear, the corpses he crawled over. He's covered in mud and blood, his own and others, and he's still holding that shovel. And he looks at those German soldiers, the ones who fired the guns that killed Merchant and Davies and the others, who launched the shell that buried him, and something breaks. Or maybe something focuses. He doesn't think. He just moves. The first German doesn't see him coming. Easton swings the shovel like an axe, the blade catching the man in the side of the neck. The second spins around, reaching for his rifle. The shovel takes him in the face. The third starts to scream. Easton hits him in the throat. He's not a man anymore. He's a thing from the earth, covered in grave dirt, moving with the mechanical efficiency of someone who's already died and come back. 4 minutes. That's how long it takes. The Germans in that trench section are exhausted, not expecting an attack from behind, certainly not expecting a mud-covered ghost with a shovel. Some run. Easton chases them. Some try to fight. The shovel is faster than rifles at close range, more brutal than bayonets. When it's over, 23 German soldiers are dead or dying. Easton stands in their trench, breathing hard, the shovel dripping, and he still doesn't quite understand what he's done. The British counterattack comes 20 minutes later. They find him there, sitting against the trench wall, the shovel across his lap. At first, they think he's German. Then they recognize the uniform under the mud. They ask his name, his unit. He tells them. They don't believe him. Private William Easton was listed as killed in action at 6:50 a.m. It's now 4:15 p.m. They're looking at a dead man. The German commander for this sector was Hauptmann Friedrich Müller, 34 years old, veteran of 3 years of war. When he receives the report that evening, he reads it twice. A British soldier, buried by artillery, emerged behind their lines after 9 hours and killed 23 men with an entrenching tool before his own forces retook the position. Müller writes in his diary that night, an entry that survived the war and sits now in the Bavarian War archives. We are not fighting men anymore. We are fighting ghosts who rise from the graves we dig for them. How do you kill what's already been buried? Easton is evacuated to a field hospital. Severe dehydration, pulmonary contusions from the blast, lacerations on both hands, psychological trauma, The doctors expect shell shock, nightmares, breakdown. But Easton is from the mines. He's been buried before. He sleeps for 16 hours straight and wakes up asking when he can return to his unit. 3 weeks later, he's back in the trenches. He carries that same shovel for the rest of the war, sharpens it every night. Other soldiers start to notice. When Easton is in your section, things happen. Raids succeed. Positions hold. There's a rumor, never confirmed, that German soldiers in the Somme sector started marking certain areas of the line with warnings. Der Grabmann, they called him. The grave man. Whether that's true or just myth built from trauma and exhaustion doesn't really matter. What matters is that Easton survived the war. He was wounded twice more, gassed once, and walked out of Germany in November 1918 with that shovel strapped to his pack. He went home to Durham, married a woman named Sarah Caldwell in 1920, had 3 children, refused to work in the mines again, couldn't do it after being buried in France, so he became a carpenter instead. Built furniture, houses, lived quietly. He never talked about the war. His children didn't know about the 9 hours or the 23 Germans until after he died in 1963 at age 70. They found the shovel in his workshop, wrapped in oilcloth, the blade still sharp, the handle worn smooth from years of his hands gripping it every time the nightmares came. Hauptmann Friedrich Müller survived the war as well, returned to Munich, became a teacher. In 1953, he published a memoir called Gesichter aus dem Schlamm, Faces from the Mud. In it, there's a passage about September 26, 1916, about the British soldier who came from the earth like something from German folklore, like a Wiedergänger, a revenant. Müller writes that after that day, he stopped believing in clean deaths or heroic battles. War wasn't noble. It was just men trying to survive in the worst conditions imaginable, and sometimes survival made you into something you couldn't recognize. The two men never met after the war, as far as records show. But there's a letter in the Imperial War Museum, donated by Easton's daughter in 1989, that suggests they might have corresponded once. It's dated 1955, written in German with an English translation attached. The signature is illegible, but the letter talks about a day in the Somme when the writer saw a British soldier emerge from the earth covered in mud and blood, and how that image haunted him for 40 years, wondering if the man survived, if he made it home, if he found peace. The letter ends with a question. Did we bury you, or did you bury us? The tactic Easton used, if you can call survival a tactic, didn't change warfare. There's no manual for digging yourself out of a grave and then killing your way to safety. But his story did become part of the training culture in some British units. The idea that you don't give up, that miners know things about being underground that soldiers don't, that sometimes the only tool you need is the simplest one and the will to keep using it. During World War II, British commando units studied accounts of close-quarters combat from the First War, and Easton's name appears in at least 3 training documents about improvised weapons and the psychological impact of unexpected attacks. There's a memorial in Durham now, dedicated to the miners who fought in World War I. Easton's name is on it, along with 2,347 others from that region. But there's also something else. In the Durham Mining Museum, in a climate-controlled case, there's an entrenching tool. British Army issue, circa 1915. The handle has initials carved into it. WE. The blade has notches filed into the edge. 23 of them. Nobody knows for certain if it's the actual shovel. Easton's family donated it, but they never confirmed the details. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just a symbol. But visitors stand in front of that case and stare at it, and they wonder what it takes to dig yourself out of death and come back fighting. The lesson isn't about violence. It's not about revenge or killing or any of that. The lesson is about what humans can survive when we're pushed past every reasonable limit. William Easton should have died at 6:47 a.m. on September 26, 1916. The mathematics of artillery of collapsed dugouts, of oxygen deprivation. All say he should have suffocated in the dark. But he had skills from his life before the war. He had tools, even if he had to take them from the dead. And he had something else. He had the refusal to accept that this was where his story ended. 9 hours in the grave, and then he stood up. That's the part that matters. Not what happened after. Not the violence or the body count. Just that moment when his head broke the surface and he took his first breath of air that didn't taste like death. Everything else, the shovel, the Germans, the legend, that's just what happened because he refused to stay buried. And maybe that's what we all do, in our own ways. We all get buried by something. Trauma, failure, loss, fear. And the only question that matters is whether we dig or whether we let the earth have us. William Easton chose to dig, with bleeding fingers and a dead man's shovel, in total darkness, not knowing if there was a way out. He chose to dig anyway, and that choice, that refusal, kept him alive long enough to see the sun again, to go home, to build a life with his scarred hands. The war tried to bury him. He climbed back out. And he kept climbing for 47 more years until natural causes, not German shells, finally put him down for good. That's not a war story. That's a human story. And it's been waiting in the mud for over 100 years for someone to tell it right.